welcome everyone. Hello. I'm going to hand over to Annette to do a little introduction.
Hello, welcome. Thanks for coming today, particularly on this very hot day, and for spending the time in your Zoom room as opposed to outside or on the beach. Today's event is the 5th open space event that we've had this year, exploring different aspects of participatory theatre practice. And these events are part of a strand of work that we started a couple of years ago under the guise of the Centre for Excellence in Participatory Theatre. The aim of the Centre is to provide space and resources and to support the participatory theatre movement within its practice. And obviously there's been huge leaps forward within digital participatory theatre practice over the last year. So in addition to these events, which are all free or at low cost for some aspects of the training, there's also a broad range of short videos, filmed essays, papers and books, which are all available via the Collective Encounters website under the Centre for Excellence in Participatory Theatre heading. These are ever evolving and we're adding to them constantly, so please do bookmark and revisit the site throughout the year, and hopefully you'll be able to find something new at some point. In September, it would be remiss of me not to signpost this event. We are doing a new style of event, which is an Arts for Social Change showcase, and it's on the evening of the 30th of September. And we're inviting anybody that comes along or anybody that gets signposted to the event to come along to submit a form in order to make a presentation at the event. The presentations are will be made by participatory theatre makers, and they're about your passions, your ideas, or your projects, or anything that you think deserves a better profile. And they're discussion events. So each presentation will be 5 minutes long. I think there'll be 15 slides. Is that right, Marianne?
Yeah.
Around the presentations, and then we'll open up the discussions and open up the floor to people to contribute ideas and respond to some of the presentations that they've seen. So I'm just going to share with you now there's a short online form that you can complete if you do want to make a submission and do a presentation at the Arts for Social Change showcase. So today we're looking again at participatory theatre practice and changes in the movement over the last year. And we've got speakers and contributors from across the country, actually. So we've got Jenny from Leicester. I think Jamie, you're down in London, but you work for Diversity that works across the country. We've got Ollie and Karen from Burnley Youth Theatre, and Alex down in Plymouth who works for Beyond Face. I hope I haven't missed anybody out there. And I'm going to hand
our own Sarah.
And our own Sarah, who, I'm sorry, Sarah,
That's all right.
although works across the country, is actually based in County Tipperary in Ireland. So welcome. I'm going to hand over to Marion, and then we're going to start the presentations, and after the presentations we'll go into the open space and discussion format.
Fab. So I'm just going to share my screen here and present this. So this is our event today, and you can see the presentations from our contributors on the right hand side, who will respond to our calling question for today's event, which is, what does the changing world of participatory theatre look like in 2021 and beyond? So the first half, about the first hour, we'll hear from 6 different speakers who are with 5 companies, and they will give their own responses from their own practice to this question. In the second half, we will move on to an open space discussion. We will name the rooms together. So we have not set an agenda for today. We hope that you will take on some of the ideas and provocations in our guest speakers' presentations to set an agenda together for the second half. Then we will open rooms and you can move freely between them to discuss what's next. Thank you. So we're even a couple of minutes early to start. So I think we'll hand over to Jamie, who will start today. And Amy, if you're ready, you can start sharing Jamie's presentation.
Hello everyone, I'm delighted to be here. I'm working around my videos, going through my PowerPoint. What I'm saying will be in my PowerPoint, though, if you don't understand me completely. it ought to be in the book. Right, I know I've only got 5 minutes, so I better get going. Thank you, next. So, I do a lot of presentations, and I've been saying it forever. The those veterans imagine to be the lifeblood of the art. Therefore, written in my own life, or I got this forever. I've been saying that endlessly forever, but it remains my basics of what I do. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's aiming. I've been in context with why it's really important. Now, can we go back and yeah, this is the context in which my work is. I've been the way we understand community, exchange, and open with everything new work, from new politics, we brought Brexit, we brought pandemic, it's magnifying inequality, we brought the rise of populism. There's very much a divide and bullshit going on. The left agenda is a bit of a mockery, in my opinion. It's probably one of that, there's a lot of colonialism, lack of hypocrisy going on at higher. There's a lot of covert individual rather than collective position. I've been the freedom day of Monday for democracy, freedom of fun, and the opposite was I've been on the record of the state is very confused at the moment. So that's the context on which we are working. So the effect on communities are more isolated, literally metaphorically, where having a of recovery and there's a real survival of the British rhetoric going on. The language of vulnerability. We know we're vulnerable. We're all put in vulnerable situations. But I think the language we use is very problematic. And as we all know, the inequalities have been magnified at the moment in terms of income, jobs, access to the government, housing, slowly, mental health. Thank you for getting there. I'm really talking really quickly. So, diversity, this is our own experience driven about diversity. The body today a new one have led the old ways and work in a new way. They were quicker to adapt than the main company. They really needed to carry on contacting people and their engagement became more critical for many people who work with. This was their only contact with the outside world. And obviously isolation loneliness mental not magnified with the people we work with. So we need to create spaces. We need to empathize. And that was even more valuable than pre-pandemic. we were lucky in that we had the resources to help with technology and access, and we were able to make our sections inclusive and accessible. I know that's not always the case, but in our case, we were able to do it. And we ended up making certificates of performance in homes, and we shared them over Zoom. And they went really well, and we made them really good. Next time we do, no, the future. I mean, a lot of you know this already. I know preaching to the converted alive. When the deflection I about is Amy, do you mind reading this out? I'll
Yeah.
be here all day if I read it out.
So the recognition that all artists have the right to participate, breakdown of hierarchies, professional, non-professional, artists, non-artists, recalibration of power, working with co-design,
Yeah.
deeper embedded working, longer returning to communities, working cross-sectorially, look to the past, so many brilliant examples of participatory our work, poetic documentary, reliant on the stories and the participants we work with, remote/hybrid working, bringing traditionally siloed communities together, sharing understanding equality. In Plymouth, a group with learning difficulties, working with the experience of homelessness and addiction.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I've been bringing different groups together. I've been wondering it's been amazing to bring different colors together, and I want to do more of that. So, you all know this, you deny people and community relationships understanding. We want to embrace rich innovation and discover. We want to tell us we want to represent and represent the world around us. You all know that. This is my last slide. Do you mind reading the same?
World differently, to shine a light in the shadows, to turn up to revitalize communities, to
Hi, goodbye.
That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Jamie, and huge, lots and lots of food for thought there. I really like the point that you made around the language of vulnerabilities and how people aren't vulnerable, but
Participatory theatre has always been a many-headed, evolving beast, but the monumental shifts in practice seen throughout the pandemic are unparalleled. The dramatic innovations in our work and the honest conversations we've had have forced a seismic shift. The value placed on our work and our ability to meet the needs of communities in unique and meaningful ways have finally put an end to questions about our importance within the arts and cultural sectors. I believe that the future is bright, and I offer this provocation in the spirit of radical optimism. This is what I hope and believe to be possible for the future of participatory theatre in the UK. First, the work. I can't tell you how excited I am about the work. Making theatre with communities, using creative approaches to explore and articulate our world. When has it been more vital? For all the truly awful aspects of the pandemic, some amazing opportunities have emerged. We've engaged people who wouldn't and couldn't have engaged in the room. The future of participatory theatre must include this new community and its influx of creativity and talent. Engaging this community has opened rich possibilities for our local, global and cross-community work. Of course, there were many who didn't want to join in digitally, and participants experienced isolation. But our sector was so inventive in trying to include people, from telephone workshops to doorstep performances, postal packs, and all manner of unbelievably creative responses. And the digital work that emerged was amazing. It's been a year of whirlwind learning, new ideas, new approaches, experimenting, being pushed to the limit of our creativity, working together to solve problems and sharing what we were learning. In the future, hybrid working will enable us to cherry pick the best of all that learning, combining digital engagement, analog techniques, and being in the room. The digital performance languages we're learning will fundamentally shift participatory theatre as a form and truly reimagine theatre for 21st century audiences. And we can feed ourselves and benchmark our work with participatory theatre from all over the world without the carbon footprint involved in travel. In terms of the process and practice of participatory theatre, my hope is that it's ethical, that it's rooted in creative collaboration, anti-racism, shared decision-making, and radicalism, that our creative processes are continually evolving, and that we set the bar for quality. For the workforce, I want to see a thriving sector where participatory artists are properly paid for all their time and hidden subsidy is a thing of the past, where we have a quality of life and work that reflects our highly specialised skill sets, and our expertise is valued to the same level as that of peers in what are considered professional or mainstream cultural sectors. A sector in which the artists are fully supported, whether freelance or employed, where organisations are not forced to compete for value for money, making bargain basement budgets, which so often lead to artists being paid below the living wage. Yes, our history is rooted in incredible women and men who did everything for nothing with no budgets and made amazing work. But that's not okay in 2021. Participatory theatre has staked its claim and proved its worth and should be resourced comparably with what is considered to be professional theatre. Otherwise, it ends up with a workforce who are able somehow to self-subsidise or who work until they break just to earn a manageable living. This does not lead to a diverse workforce. And the future of participatory theatre is most certainly a diverse one, where all our communities see themselves represented in our workforce, where our creative output genuinely reflects the many diverse creative influences of the communities we collaborate with, where our professional Zoom rooms are no longer a sea of white, and entrance into the workforce is through many and varied routes, not just via a university degree. This change is happening. This future is emerging, which is why I have my radical optimism. Organisations are collaborating and local and national networks have formed that are asking how we can work together to support artists. We're taking control back. Artists and organisations are developing shared, agreed, fair working principles. We need funders to follow suit and support this, reflecting it in their funding levels and priorities. Again, I'm optimistic. The landscape is changing and a much more progressive way is being forged by funders such as Esme Fairbairn and Paul Hamlin Foundation. Indeed, the reaction of most arts funders during the pandemic was indicative of a responsive and people need-led approach, which must continue. Arts Council England's Let's Create strategy is potentially very positive for our sector, and now is the time to be pushing for major shifts in funding if its aspirations are to be realised. Exciting funding and strategic development programmes have been trialled in Scotland and Wales, showing us that new ways of approaching arts funding are possible. But we need representation of our sector at senior decision-making levels across arts and culture funders in order that our value will finally be fully recognised. And we need a significant redistribution of wealth. It's time that the systemic inequality and complacency in the arts and culture sector is rooted out and the arts ecology is allowed to evolve. In terms of diversifying and strengthening our sector, innovative training and mentoring programmes are running all over the country. Progression routes are being developed by grassroots organisations to facilitate the journey from first-time participant to professional theatre facilitator. Artworks Alliance, as a national network, alongside various regional networks, have flourished during the pandemic. And I hope that organisations and artists will come together through these to work in solidarity and have the strategic impact on the decisions that shape funding and support for our sector. I hope that we'll work together to provide regional supports for freelancers, shared learning, opportunities for emerging artists, networked training programmes, free CPD, as well, of course, as the chance to let off steam and chat with other people who know what your work feels like. I hope that in the future, we make time to keep learning and sharing. Of course, I hope that more people use the resources in the Centre for Excellence and get inspired. I hope they come together to interrogate our discipline, keep practice fresh, share ideas, and reflect critically. I believe that the future of participatory theatre is very bright. The work will be amazing and important, the workforce diverse and valued, and the sector will be respected and appropriately resourced. I hope that we will have a seat at the decision-making table, and then in the post-COVID fallout, the work that has most meaningfully engaged people will radically reshape the arts landscape.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And I love that link that you've made between being paid properly as a sector and diversity, that it does actually cost money, and that's the only way that we're going to try towards or move towards equity. And quite interestingly, I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but the National Audit Office have done an audit of the Cultural Recovery Fund, and I will share a link to that very in-depth document in a short while. I think next up is Jenny, who is going to talk a little bit actually about Let's Create. That sort of seamlessly ties together.
Well, it's almost like somebody planned it. So hopefully you can see that screen. So my name's Jenny Jordan. I'm an associate professor in creative and cultural industries at De Montfort University, and my research interests are around cultural policy. So I'm going to look behind the scenes at the funding processes, really. Prior to this life, I worked in local authorities, in arts and events departments, in venues and festivals as a producer. My particular focus was on audiences and participation. In that work, I came to understand that the problem of hard to reach groups was actually a really badly conceived idea of the issue, and I wanted to understand more about that. So my research looks at cultural policy and equalities, and today I want to talk about the Arts Council and Let's Create, but I want to start by looking at why Let's Create is such a radical move from the Arts Council in where it's gone from. So cultural funding in the UK, that moved on. How do I move that one? Okay. Cultural funding in the UK has traditionally come from two main sources: the various iterations of the Arts Council and local authorities. Until austerity in 2010, local authorities were the main funder in aggregate. And this matters because in general, local authorities have funded culture for two main reasons. One, civic pride and place promotion, so culture as glorification. And second, to support local residents, sometimes via regeneration initiatives or youth work, sometimes just for intrinsic reasons of residents having a good time. And this is a form of cultural democracy, supporting the cultural interests of the local population. The Arts Council, in contrast, was founded to support artistic excellence, which John Maynard Keynes, who was the founder, argued meant professional artists and professional arts organisations, as they would be the only ones who could dedicate enough time for their work to become excellent. Their approach was to select nationally excellent work and distribute it by touring it around the country or funding regional theatres, etc. This is known as democratisation of culture in cultural policy. The people in charge, the artistic elites, decide what is worthy of being seen. Sometimes also known as the deficit model, because the hard to reach are lacking something in their taste or their education, so they're not coming because there's something wrong with them. But prior to 2010 and the austerity, we had one body which therefore supported professional artists from a limited number of art forms for excellence sake, and we had local funding to support participation, social engagement and local residents. However, that's now changed, and what we have now, because local authority funding is almost gone for the cultural sector unless you're very lucky. There's no legal requirement for local authorities to fund culture. We now have one main funding body. That's why I titled this thing, have you tried the Arts Council? Because that's what everybody gets asked. So we look at the Arts Council as some kind of generous body giving us grants, rather than an arm of government that is redistributing our money back to us as something that we should have a right to. So Spivak argues that this is a problem of the existence of leaders, and that we should take control of the state and remake it to be something that we want to have. So this isn't me having a go at the Arts Council. The Arts Council is doing what it was set up to do. I'm not moaning about it at all. But what it's also done, in addition to promoting the high arts, is that it is also consistently centralised in London. So when it was first set up, it had 14 regional offices. These were closed by 1956. The local authorities reacted to that some 10 years later by setting up regional arts associations. They went to the Arts Council and said, if we set up a regional arts association, will you match fund it? But the local authorities were in charge of the regional arts associations. They existed until 1989. In 1989, there was the Wilding Report, which said the regional arts associations were inconsistent, some good, some not so good, which was true. And they replaced them with regional arts boards. Regional arts boards were basically run by the Arts Council with local authorities as partners, not as the main instigators of it. So it shifted power back towards the Arts Council. In 2002, the regional arts boards were incorporated into the Arts Council England. That was a whole hoo-ha in itself, some of you may remember. And, you know, that was, they created 10 regional offices. And there was an argument then that this would give the regions more national power, which I think was actually a misunderstanding of actually what regional organizations wanted to do, which was actually not have national power, but to be responsive to local cultural needs. Even those 10 regional offices have actually been reduced to 5 in a cost-saving manner. And in amongst all of this, the Arts Council has also captured control of the National Lottery Arts money. This was a missed opportunity, I think, to set up an alternative structures to redistribute cultural funding, as with the Heritage Lottery Fund. So there is a monopoly, I'm arguing, on cultural funding that sits with the Arts Council. And I think that what we have to do now is to take Let's Create, which is a real opportunity in shifting the Arts Council's attitudes from democratization of culture to something more participatory, but it's still reliant on you going to the Arts Council and asking them for grants as if these are the gifts of the state. And there is a need, I think, for socially engaged artists to be at the table, as Sarah argued. But actually, I think we don't need to be at their table. We need to create our own tables and actually set up alternative systems where we can make the decisions and they can be of us and for us, rather than us applying for gifts from the state. So that's my provocation.
That was fantastic. So interesting. Thank you, Jenny. And hopefully you'll be able to share that presentation and any other research that you think might be pertinent with people that have come along today. Thank you. I think it's Alex up next. Is that right?
Think so.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, everybody. Cool. So what I'm about to say to you comes from a place of lived experience. I think it's important that I just state that at the beginning. When I was younger, I remember watching Star Trek. I didn't enjoy it, but I remember thinking, wow, it's so cool that all of the touch screens and the way that they used to call people up and have them on the other side of the screen and talk to them, talking to the computers in the room and then replying. Alexa, what time is it? I remember watching the Jetsons when I was younger and thought, amazing, look at their flying cars. And I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. But on June the 30th this year, BMW tested out their first air car, flying from one airport to another. I could go on with the advancement of tech, but that's not why I'm here. What I want to bring to you today is the notion of the speed of change. Beyond Face is 6 years old this August. I set the company up in response to conversations with young people with black and brown skin telling me that the theatre industry wasn't for people like us. And that we have, and over the years, we have developed an artist development program, making professional work, and now we deliver consultancy. Last year, so many things came to light. The big red button of access, diversity, and inclusion suddenly started to shine bright in organisations and companies across the country and the world. The black squares appeared and statements were made. Was there hope? And then suddenly the influx of messages and emails and phone calls from news reporters all wanting me to comment, to film my experience, to ask artists and young people to film theirs, participating in emergency Zoom meetings with other black and brown arts leaders, calling to action. An increase of 400 Instagram followers just in one day, people wanting to collaborate, requests for new partnerships, into the business plans without permission we go. The speed of change? Donations were made. The doors of the houses I had been knocking on for 6 years were suddenly letting me into the comfort of their living rooms instead of letting me stand on the doorstep as a salesperson trying to get them to buy into what I had to say. I was suddenly sitting with my brochure of lived experience, highlighting the basic offers for change that they could make in an instant, the things that could be immediately put in place, the speed of change. But as I continued to speak and read through the pages and the pages of the tiny little simple things that could be changed, the welcome suddenly was no more. The cup of tea turned cold and stale, and suddenly time was cut short. The excuses, the barriers of change began to emerge. We are on a journey, and I'm afraid we can't go as quickly as you want us to. The problem is this place just isn't that diverse. We always knew that you were going to be the negative company. The thing is, I really want to, but it's the board that needs convincing. We've done lots of things in the past, so we have been doing stuff. But, well, what is it that you actually want us to do? We just don't have the capacity, sorry. It's just all too much, isn't it? It's too big to try and change. The speed of change. The young people paused with engaging with some of our activities. Their parents said to us, not because of the pandemic, but because of Black Lives Matter. They wanted to hide away. We are getting more and more referrals from schools where young people are struggling with their identity and racism, and the schools don't know what to do. They want us to train the staff, help the young people. I've sat in meetings on behalf of students experiencing racism. We demand a change. The outcome? People banned from speaking to us across organisations and education establishments. The speed of change? The Jetsons' Star Trek presented us with things that seemed unimaginable to happen in real life. but they've achieved it. We now have Alexa telling us information, playing our favourite songs. We now have Zoom to connect us across the country and around the world. We now even have flying cars on the horizon. And whether we like technology or not, these inventors saw something possible when they made it happen. In this last year, we found new ways of working online. Schools, universities were doing blended learning. We made stuff possible. With speed, we saw change. The Jetsons were set in 2062. What will the world look like then? What change will be made? Beyond Face, we are not waiting until 2062. The work we do, we believe, makes change happen every day. We are stopping knocking on people's doors now. We are building our own houses. We have a justice and empowerment programme embedded across our work. We start with joy at the beginning of every one of our meetings. We will continue to deliver introduction to the industry days, and we will continue to attend meetings on behalf of students experiencing racism to ensure that they are heard. We will make work that isn't trauma porn. We will listen. We will respond. We are the speed of change. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That was incredible. As such a unique perspective and really interesting, which hopefully we'll be able to dig in a little bit deeper when we have the Q&A at the after the final presentation. So I think finally, our final presentation, and we are running a little bit over time, but we're with Ollie and Karen from Burnley Youth Theatre, who will be co-presenting next. Ollie.
Hi everyone. Ollie, you ready?
Yeah, I'll just unmute myself. Everyone see that? Okay. Yeah.
Brilliant. Sorry, I'm just working out how to see my script whilst zooming. Okay, everyone. Hi, I'm Karen Metcalf. I'm the Artistic Director and CEO at Burnley Youth Theatre.
And I'm Ollie Daly, and I'm the Youth Arts Engagement Worker at Burnley Youth Theatre.
So we're just going to run through some of the kind of strategic and delivery challenges and successes that we've experienced over the past 18 months during COVID and while all the things have been going on in the world. So I'm going to begin. So some of the strategic challenges that we faced were how we ran an organisation with most of our members of staff on furlough during the first wave. I was even furloughed myself as a CEO, and we just had one marketing member of staff who kind of ran the whole organisation with support from the board. Obviously, income generation and access to emergency grants was a challenge. And also when we came out of the Zoom world, preparing to have people back into the building safely and in a COVID secure environment. Some of the successes that we experienced on a strategic level were understanding and responding better to the barriers of engagement, such as digital poverty, fear of returning to workshops, especially for disabled participants, and the financial strains caused and heightened by the pandemic. It also gave us a chance to step back as an organisation, take stock of our previous programme of work, and really go back to our roots of children, young people, and theatre being our core focus. It made us more dynamic, resilient, and open to change. Moving forward, we want to continue that flexibility and make sure that we're responsive and adaptable like we were in those early days of the pandemic. We definitely now will seek funding to continue our digital development, which is something we never thought we would be able to do, and make sure that we continue to upskill as an organisation and also individual practitioners. We'll also ensure that funding is in place to enable us to make all participatory activities accessible to everyone, including providing transport, devices, food, translators and free places. Over to you, Ollie, for delivery.
Okay, so in terms of our delivery, our challenges were, adapting online so quickly without any real experience of delivering any work online before, whilst also making sure that we're safeguarding our staff, artists and participants. How we remove the barriers of participation, including providing devices and teaching people digital skills so they're able to access our work online. Dealing with new issues that had arisen for children and young people, including Black Lives Matter, gender equality, transgender rights, and the new world of the new normal that we were living in and still are. Successes are our digital programme and improvement of digital skills and equipment, using this now in our workshops, productions, masterclasses, collaborations, and also networking with other national groups through the National Association of Youth Theatres. Engaging more artists from across the UK from more diverse backgrounds and experiences, and focusing more on long-term engagement and building up trust slowly and over a long period of time. in terms of moving forward, what we would really like to continue when we're talking about our delivery is a blended offer of online and face-to-face, and understanding the political, social and cultural landscape and embedding that into workshops, planning in order to respond to participants what they may need to talk about, and making sure that they have a voice. I think in Zoom, everyone has a voice, everyone is heard if they want to be, and that is something that we want to take forward in face-to-face delivery too.
So we're just going to give a couple of examples of projects. Thanks, Holly. So I'm going to talk about a project that we did, which was our ESOL project, which was for adults who had English for speakers as another language is what ESOL means. We had to move to online engagement when we went into national lockdown, and then Burnley stayed in local lockdown in between the next national lockdown. And Zoom was a real barrier for the participants. We provided devices for both the artists and the participants, and we moved the sessions to one-to-one WhatsApp sessions to ensure that people could access it. And then over the period of time, the artists actually did some digital learning with the participants, and that meant that we could move on and do Zoom sessions with groups eventually. And also we did some family sessions as well to include the whole family. We also created digital content on our YouTube channel, which you can kind of see on the images, to extend the learning, which again is something that we kind of embraced and promoted that digital additional support. Now that we're back face to face, hopefully for a lot longer, we had to make sure that we were still considering those access needs. So we've been providing transport and a creche for the children of the adult participants that have been involved. Over to you, Ollie.
Yeah, so the final project that we'd like to talk about is a Holly Grove project, which is our local special educational needs school. And what's interesting about this project is we actually continued working with them face-to-face throughout the pandemic, as there were too many barriers to deliver this work online and for them to get the best need out of the creative engagement. So we delivered that, and from there, the young people now, back when we're delivering face-to-face within our organisation, have been able to step in to access us out of school time, and then also the school now want to continue their relationship with us and embed us in their school life and school programme. I think what was really good about this is at the time no one was getting any extra relief or support, especially SEN children and young people in schools. So for us to continue to deliver that creative engagement really showed the school, I suppose, the need and want for arts engagement. And
then our final provocation from Burnley Youth Theatre, because participatory theatre is at the heart of everything we do, but the big producing and receiving house theatres suddenly gave their creative learning, outreach and children and young people's programmes a platform and a voice during the COVID crisis when they had no tickets to sell or shows to promote. Although this was really refreshing and amazing to see, how do we now use our voice as a sector to keep participatory arts elevated and seen as a true priority in the work that bigger theatres do, rather than being back to a sideline? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Karen and Ollie. Really interesting to hear about your experience, and particularly within the unique context that Burnley lived in, over the last 18 months, in terms of continuous kind of lockdowns, where other parts of the country had some light relief. So we've got about 15 minutes, unfortunately. We're a bit short for questions for the panel. I've just put a call in the chat box for any questions that anybody has. We've covered quite a lot of ground in the last hour, quite scary amount of ground, actually. Alex's presentation on the speed and barriers to change that she's directly experienced. Jamie talked a lot about the context in which we're working with now and the opportunities that arise from that as well. Jenny's covered cultural policy and the investment landscape in which we're working. And obviously Sarah and Jamie looked at the passions, purpose and opportunities, I think, that are arising, that are happening right now. And I was really interested in Jenny's provocation around setting up an alternative system. And I think that's something that we should definitely be looking at exploring in the open space event, a part of the event after the break. So do we have any questions? If you want to just unmute yourself and speak up, if you don't want to put something in the chat box.
There's Simon's got his hand up. Simon, go ahead.
Thanks a lot. Oh, blimey. Thanks a lot. Fascinating, absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. But loads of thoughts running through my head. But the one, I'm interested in the separate tables thing that you just mentioned, and I was very interested in the Arts Council presentation, you know, showing how the power is centralised, because I just feel that a lot of the time I'm working to a strategy with the Arts Council that they haven't caught up with yet themselves. I mean, they wouldn't fund something because my artistic idea wasn't formed enough, but surely that's the point, you know, of participatory arts work. So I'm just wondering, I don't quite know how to form the question, but this separate tables thing, I wonder whether we are mentally restricting ourselves by thinking of ourselves as the arts sector only. And I'm not suggesting that we should just be the health sector or the wellbeing sector or the adult education sector or whatever. I mean, of course we cross those barriers, but are we something particular of ourselves? I mean, this is what you mean by a separate table, I'm guessing. It's like, you know, I read a book recently which Sarah put me onto, which said we don't have to make any excuses for what we do anymore. We're good, you know, we do what we do brings so many multiple benefits that cuts across so many kind of areas that we surely should we not be thinking less that we're up, you know, we're in the arts sector and more a sector of itself. That's my question.
Who would like to respond to that from the panel?
I feel like it was aimed at me. I don't know if that's true. I would say yes. I mean, I would say that we need to break the Arts Council's monopoly. I think the Arts Council does a fantastic job if you are a professional artist working in, you know, significant organizations, the national portfolio organizations and whatever. I mean, and I think that there's going to have to be roots in somehow. Some of that money is going to have to be liberated from the Arts Council in order to do that. But, you know, maybe there's ways to set up an organization which is a participatory theatre organization, which says, give us all the money and we will then work with it to our roots in the same way that the regional arts associations did, you know. But somehow, yeah, that needs to happen, and there needs to be a status created somehow for this work, which currently doesn't exist.
So
Can I chip in on that, Nettie? Just to say that two things really. One is that Arts Work Alliance has been lobbying for Arts Council to set aside a really significant proportion of money that can be distributed by a more representative consortium of socially engaged organisations and public sector organisations and so on. And it's not been well received at present, but precedents happening in Scotland and Wales that I think Arts Council England will have to look at. And just briefly, the other thing is, I don't think we should separate ourselves. We should be aiming to separate ourselves from the arts sector. But I do think, and again, one of the lobbying things over the last 12 months has been to start getting us recognised, participatory arts as a sector in its own right, that it is a subsector of the arts, and you know, we don't want to be cut adrift. We want to be recognised as just as bloody important as mainstream arts and culture, and you know, our value being on a par with the Royal Opera House or whatever else. So I wouldn't like to see us separated from the arts, but to identify ourselves as having a clear set of principles, practices, processes that make us unique.
In some way, it's a little bit like rolling back the time, because 30 years ago, when we did have the regional arts boards that weren't, you know, overseen or coordinated by the Arts Council, they were made up of representatives from the local sector and potentially broader people outside of the arts sector as well. So, you know, there is a model, there is a precedent for this, but obviously it's a long time ago. Jenny, you wanted to speak. Sorry, you put your hand up again.
I'm just concerned about lobbying because that leaves the power where it is, and I think we need to be sure that actually, you know, this is our money. This is my money. You know, I have as much right to it to be spent where I think it should be spent as anybody who's on the Arts Council. You know, this is not a lobbying. I think we need to go in with more confidence to these kind of conversations. It's like, you know, this is our money.
Absolutely. Ollie, did you want to chip in?
No.
Any other comments around this sort of moment in time, this opportunity to take back the power. No, there's an observation here in the chat from Cara, who said other organisations have stepped up in relation to participatory arts. They're mainly funding organisations listed, which is SMA Fairburn, Gulbenkian, Paul Hamlin. They're foundations, so they're not suitable for takeover, obviously, because it's not our money. Well, it probably is in some way, but it's sort of private money as well.
Jamie, did you have a comment there?
I've been gatekeeping, and obviously the art council are the gatekeepers at the moment. The difficulty is setting up another system for those gatekeepers. I mean, I don't know the answer to that, but substituting one gatekeeper for another gatekeeper. Of which only the answers are really anti-gatekeepers.
Yeah, maybe that's an opportunity to sort of draw from other sort of alternative ways of being democratic as well, isn't there? In terms of having a frequent churn around of people that are making those decisions as well, rather than this static group of people, as you say, the gatekeepers that then become too powerful and embedded in that process.
And in fact, that shift of power balance is actually about a question really of, is it about power or is it about shared decision making? And comes to John Holloway's thing about change the world without taking power. It is about trying to get rid of gatekeepers and share decision making, not only in our practice but also in our strategic world.
I think we've definitely got a theme for one of the rooms in the chat section, sort of evolving. I just wondered if anybody had any thoughts or questions around hybrid working, because I think we've all know what it means now, hybrid working. But has anybody got any examples of practice that you think, yeah, that actually works, or any sort of observations around working in a hybrid way? So that's both digitally and face to face. Jamie.
Oh, clearly I was gonna eat it when we began to do that. And in the way I love being a room of people, but in terms of people we can read, we've extended our reach exponentially by working online. So many more people could access what we do. I'm dying to be in a room of people and do the community arts and do all that. So, loads of but in many ways, it democratized and opened up what we do.
And I think from the panel's presentations, that certainly came out from across the board, that different people engaged in some of activities. Some people experienced barriers to working within this space, which they managed to overcome over time. But it did enable other people to work within this space. And also that idea, I think, that you raised, Jamie, about bringing different people together, which is potentially easier or less complex within this space.
Yeah, we did a program for people from Britain, Rochdale, coming together, and that was brilliant. And they learned so much of each other, but there's no way we could get it not remotely. But it was really amazing, yeah.
And I think what's interesting is around the presentation of work, because often the way that we used to present work was maybe to a small number of people within a sort of local community venue. But now our messages and our art can reach much further. And what does that mean in terms of participatory theatre? And I think some of that kind of practice and audience implications, I think, could do with sort of being unpicked as well.
Sorry,
this new world that we're moving into now in terms of freedom, it's about there's always going to be some barriers for some different groups and situations, but actually what works better for them digitally or face to face, or them both integrated, because sometimes digitally we've found that it can be better for some groups rather than others. So it's nice that we have that choice, which we would have never had before.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, Ollie. And I think absolutely, I think for some individuals, maybe with neurodiversity, and we found within our work, women really actually function in this space, and they're engaging much more in this space than ever. So that, I think that's really interesting. I think there's more learning that we can do around that, the more different types of projects that we deliver, and it's about making sure that we have this shared space to share our learning as well. Karen.
I think we've been able to take the opportunity to collaborate as well, much more working online. So through National Association of Youth Theatres, we've done exchanges and met different youth groups and done shared workshops together. So the young people, their world is opening up a little bit by meeting, doing a Zoom with a group from London with much more diverse than they are, and it's been really useful that, and we're linking with a group in over in Southeast Asia, and hopefully trying to sort something out with them. So it isn't just about kind of the benefits for individuals, it's the benefits for them as a whole, and seeing other communities and seeing what else is out there. So yeah, we've really enjoyed that aspect of it, but it is harder at this point now to get young people engaged in the online world unless it is something really exciting like that. They just want to be back in person.
We've had a very similar experience with our program as well. And as you say, you now don't have to raise that £5,000 for the train tickets and fill in 50,000 risk assessment forms, if you do want to sort of introduce them to young people from London as well, which is great. Alex.
Yeah, I just think, just to follow on from that, I think we're part of, the same as Burnley Youth Theatre, of an international network literally across the world with about 18 different places. And I think the joy of that is also being able to know the truth of what's going on in a place, and not like I haven't had to be so reliant on checking the news, because I've been able to be in spaces with people that are literally in Palestine or South Africa, and to hear it right from their mouths. And I think that that's been great for young people to have that access to. And I think just recognizing that, yeah, like I guess on that, like the learning that we can have more from international places, and the fact that, this is still a luxury, to be able to have access to Zoom, and it just kind of puts things into perspective in terms of like the Arts Council are big on quality, aren't they? And I think it's interesting that I feel like that's been asked to be looked at, like we can reframe what that notion of quality is as well.
Absolutely, that's really interesting, the idea of sort of reframing quality within the digital and sort of hybrid space as well. It feels as though we could sort of like run 5 events around some of the themes that are coming up here, but we are, I think, at break time. I'm going to hand over to Marianne.
Yeah, thank you. Apologies for my internet issues halfway through. I don't know if I dropped out or interrupted your presentation, Sarah, but it seems to be more stable now. Great, thank you everyone for your presentations, and thank you, Nettie, for helping host and facilitate those. That was really fantastic, and I think, as Annette says, there's loads of topics that we could really delve into now and start to look at for our second half and the discussions. So what we'll do now is we'll take a 5 to 10 minute break. But after that, while you're in your break, have a think of the things from all the different provocations and presentations today, to see if there's anything that you particularly want to follow on and follow an idea or a lead or a provocation, and we'll set an agenda together in the second half, and we'll explain a bit more about how the open space works. So yeah, see you soon. Have a break, stretch your legs, get a cold drink. Fantastic. Harriet, could you put on some music while we wait? Fantastic.
Thank you to the presenters.
Yes.